Okay, so we are going to start learning about Chol HaMoed. So Chol HaMoed are the intermediate days in the longer festivals. So Pesach and Sukkot. We have a day, Yom Tov, or outside of Israel, 2 days. And then there's some intermediate days. And then the festival ends with another day, Yom Tov, and 2 days outside of Israel. So these intermediate days, we're used to pretty much everything going, right? Our default picture of it is that essentially you can do anything. You can do any malachim. Now, in concept, it's the opposite. And I emphasize in concept. In concept, it's Yom Tov like any other day. However, there's certain exceptions. There's exceptions which allow us to do malacha, and it happens to be that once you take these exceptions into account, it's almost everything. So I don't want to summarize the entire chapter. We want to be able to go through and understand it well, but just to give an idea what we're speaking about. So let's say, for an example, one of the exceptions is for the sake of the festival, meaning it's going to somehow enhance the festival. So if I turn the light on now, that enhances my festival. If I get in the car and we go on a Chol HaMoed, now again, you can't do this on Yom Tov, you can't do this on Shabbos, just on the Chol HaMoed. We get in the car and we go on a Chol HaMoed trip and the family has a nice time, then enhances the Yom Tov. You know, if I go to the supermarket and I buy some, something yummy to serve either during Chol HaMoed or on the Yom Tov that follows Chol HaMoed, that's enhancing the Yom Tov. So pretty much many things, almost everything fit into that category. And so even though in concept you can't do malacha, but there's this exception of enhancing the Yom Tov. Another exception, there's actually several exceptions, but I'm just going to give one more as an example, and then we'll start learning and we'll get to more detail. Another example is to save a loss. So what I mean by that, so let's say someone's plumbing broke, God forbid, we should never know from these things. Let's say it's flooding their basement. So on Shabbos, there's not really much you can do about it. Yom Tov is not really much you can do about it. But on Yom Tov, since you're allowed to do malacha to protect yourself against a loss, well, letting it flood your basement is going to create a loss. So therefore, you can do whatever you need to do to stop the loss. So, and the other exceptions as well, but we'll go through the chapter. But just to give an idea that I want to emphasize in concept, it's just like Yom Tov. In theory, we can't do any malacha. You know, it's like another step down. For example, Yom Tov, in theory, in concept, is the same as Shabbos. You can't do malacha, but we had an exception. Anything for cooking, for food, that can't be done before Yom Tov, or won't be as good if you do it before Yom Tov, you're allowed to do on Yom Tov. You can't do, so you can't bake on Shabbos, but you can bake on Yom Tov. And you can't carry outside an Erev on Shabbos, but you can on Yom Tov for food. And then once you're allowed to do it for food, you're allowed to do it for other Yom Tov needs. So now I can carry my machzah, now I can carry my luv and esrog, or my, whatever happens to be. And then Chol HaMoed goes a step further. It's just like Yom Tov. You can't do the things you can't do on Yom Tov, except we have these exceptions. And now these exceptions altogether end up making that you can do almost anything. But we'll see. So chapter Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law, chapter 104, Kuf Daled, Siman Kuf Daled, Dinei Chol HaMoed, the laws of Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of a Yom Tov. So Aleph, number 1.
What page are we on? I'm sorry.
Well, it's going to depend what edition you have, but it's chapter 104.
104
is the chapter. So every edition will be a different page number. Kuf Daled, Siman Kuf Daled.
Kuf Daled, okay. Kuf Daled. Thank you.
It's okay. Aleph, number 1. Chol Hamoed asa b'ksas malachas and mutar b'ksasan. Chol Hamoed, it's forbidden to do certain malachas, and you're allowed to do others. Dahainu. So what's the definition of what you can and can't do? So we're going to say number one. Kol mashal tzarech achila l'chol hamoed or liyontav. You can do anything that is necessary for food for chol hamoed or yontav. So you can go shopping, you can drive in the car to the shop, you can pay money, you can whatever you need to bake, cook, freeze, whatever you need to do. You need to buy a new freezer, you need to buy a new oven, you need to install something, the oven. Anything you need for the food for Shabbos Yontav or for the chol hamoed. That's category number one. V'chein melacha b'davar ovid. Also, something that's going to get lost. What does that mean? Dahainu shim lo yasena. If you don't do this action, yavel they hefsed. You're going to come to a loss. So the example I gave, it doesn't have to be extreme as the basement flooding, but anything. If you don't wash these towels, they're going to go moldy and they'll be ruined. Etc. So you're allowed to do this action to avoid the loss. Now, even though we're allowed to do these malachas, we have to be extremely careful. Not to do a malacha that's forbidden. We shouldn't just think anything goes, I can do whatever I want. We have to make sure that what we're doing fits into one of the categories. And later in the chapter, we're going to bring other categories as well. As our sages have taught us, someone who profanes, he desecrates, he doesn't treat it with the respect, it's like he did idol worship. Now, probably most people who didn't do exactly what they should do in Chol Hamoed was more lack of knowledge. It wasn't, a rebellion, but in concept, if someone knows what they're doing, and that's, it's only Chol Hamoed, it's not a real festival, I'll do whatever I want, then this is, so disrespectful to Hashem, the same sort of disrespect that idol worship would be. Okay. Base number 2. So first we're going to do the negative stuff, and then we'll get into what we can do. Our sages also taught us. Someone who disgraces, embarrasses Chol Hamoed, even though he's a Torah scholar and he studies and he does many other mitzvahs, he doesn't have a share in the world to come. That's how serious it is not to disgrace Chol Hamoed. Now, what does this mean? What does that mean, disgracing it? He doesn't honor it by having slightly better food. Again, you don't have to do the whole Yontav meal for 8 days. You have 8 days worth of Yontav meals, you're going to pop. So, but it should eat nicer than you do on a regular weekday. And you should drink a little bit nicely. And you should wear better clothes. A person should really wear their Shabbos clothes if possible on Chol Hamoed. Everyone has the obligation to honor Chol Hamoed according to their ability. That's going to be different for different people. Different people, different financial situation. Different people might be away from home, whatever it happens to be. But according to the best of one's ability, and he should wear dignified, honoring clothes that befit, the Chol Hamoed. So, for those join us, it's chapter 104, Kuf Daled, and Gimel, number 3. So just to actually sum up 1 and 2, excuse me. So we've said that any malacha that is for the food of Yontav, shopping, buying, cooking, traveling to get it, we're allowed to do, but we shouldn't cheapen Yontif. Shouldn't be that it just becomes, cheapen the Chol Hamoed. It shouldn't be that now anything goes. We have to still treat with respect. We have to have nicer things, wear nicer clothes, etc. Gimel. Then this other, number 3, this other category mentioned. Meleches Davar Ovid. Something's going to get lost. Right? So doing a malacha to prevent a financial loss is allowed in Chol Hamoed. Yachol Asos Gam Aidei Yisrael Acher. Not only you're allowed to do it, you can even do it through another Jew. In other words, even though it's your loss, not this other Jew's loss. So let's just use the example I gave that the plumbing in the basement is leaking, and it's going to, if you don't attend to it, it's going to flood the entire basement, chas v'shalom, which would be a very serious loss. And you can call your friend the plumber, and he'll come and do whatever he needs to do to the pipes. And even though it's not his loss, he's allowed to work in Chol Hamoed to save your loss. A fila b'schar, he's even allowed to take payment for it. And that'd be good if they weren't allowed to. Then you book everything. But we're not taking advantage. But in other words, 2 things here. It's not his loss. Nevertheless, he's allowed to come, and he's even allowed to charge. Now that he's allowed to do it. Avol, however, Masha Eina Davar Ovid, Ela Shulatzarech Hamoed. If it's not a great loss, but it's needed for the festival, then another Jew shouldn't do it for pay. Shouldn't do it for pay. Better do it through a non-Jew. Vim Eino might say, going, if you can't find a non-Jew, and you can't do it yourself, then you can even get another Jew to do it. So let's say, for example, it's not a loss. It's I want to go buy some schnitzel to have tonight for Chol Hamoed. So I'm allowed to do that, but I shouldn't get another Jewish person to do that. So, but I can call, Uber delivery, whatever it happens to be. Then you come deliver it, can have a non-Jew come deliver it. But if there's no other way, then if I'm really stuck, I can get another Jew to do it for pay. But I was trying to avoid it. Now, Dalet, number 4. Now, we said you're allowed to do a malacha on Chol Hamoed if it's going to prevent you from having a financial loss. So, this that we said you're allowed to do something to prevent financial loss. This is only if it was impossible for you to do it before Yontif. So again, we'll use the example that I gave, that the pipe broke. It didn't break before Yontif, or it was just a minor leak. You didn't notice it till you went down, on the Chol Hamoed and saw the puddle starting to grow, and you see it's cracking more, or whatever else happened to be. It wasn't possible to do before Yontif. Avol, however, if you were able to do it on Yontif, but you said, you know what, Yontif's tomorrow. It's only a small leak. I'm not going to worry about it now. I'm going to wait till Chol Hamoed. I'm home anyway. I don't have to take time off work to meet the plumber. I'll just push it off. So if it could have been done before Yontif, but you chose v'anichoi ad Chol Hamoed, you just left it to Chol Hamoed, also lasoisa b'Chol Hamoed. Now you're not allowed to do it on Chol Hamoed. This action to prevent a loss is only if that action could not have taken place before Yontif. And any time we could have done that action before Yontif to avoid it, then we can't do it on Chol Hamoed. All right, hey, number 5. Now, any action that you're not allowed to do on Chol Hamoed. So, till now, we've given two exceptions. Exception number one is you need it for Yontov. Right? I need to go shopping to buy myself a schnitzel. Exception number two was if there's going to be a loss. Now, mowing my lawn is not either of those, right? I don't eat the grass that we mow, so it's not for my food. And if my grass grows another inch, I'm not going to have a huge financial loss. But let's have a different circumstance we're going to mention here. Let's say Yankel, who lives on the next block, he's a landscaper, or he's not a landscaper, but and never poor Yankel, he doesn't have enough money for Yontif. So what we're going to say is I'm allowed to employ him to mow my lawn. I could wait till after Yontif, after Chol Hamoed, doesn't make a difference to me. But he needs money for Yontif. He doesn't have what to eat. So I'm allowed to employ him to do a malacha on Chol Hamoed to give him something to eat. Now, again, we're not talking about now so we can go on vacation, we'll go to the Pesach hotel. We're talking about he actually doesn't have money to eat. So number 5, hey, any malacha that's forbidden to do on Chol Hamoed, im yesh kan Yisrael, if there's a Jew there, she'ein lo ma le'echol karoi l'chol hamoed v'yontav, he doesn't know what to eat appropriately. So, he might have some stale bread. That's not called appropriate food for Shabbos Yontav. You can't expect someone, although it's happened in the Jewish past, but nowadays, you don't say to someone, eat matzah and sardines for your Yontav meal. Right? He doesn't, he needs money to buy meat, whatever, proper. Mutter, so this Jew, he doesn't know what to do, doesn't know what to eat. Mutter lasoisim al yadoi. You can have him do the malacha, so he can get paid. So here's what to eat. So that's the third exception. So the first exception was what I need for Yontif. Second exception was to prevent financial loss. And the third exception is to enable a Jew to get paid so he has what to eat. Nevertheless, you should try and do it privately. So perhaps the example I gave of mowing the lawns is not the best example because it's going to be the whole world's going to see, and it's a little bit of a marasai and it doesn't look right. But let's say paint my warehouse. He's indoors, he's painting, no one knows. Again, do I need to paint today? I can paint it next week, the same thing. But he needs what to eat. So we'll hire him to do it. Now, this work it's forbidden to be done by a non-Jew. Because the whole purpose is to give salary to the Jew who needs what to eat. So I can't hire once I say, someone's so I can't have the non-Jew come paint my warehouse. The only exception is mitzvah mutam. If it's for a mitzvah, now it's allowed. So let's say, for example, I'm going to use let's say it can be any mitzvah, but most things can wait. Let's say, for a funeral, God forbid. There's lots of things, digging the grave, making a coffin, whatever, different things. This is for a mitzvah, you can have a non-Jew do it. Vav, number 6. No questions today. I'm getting worried. Number 6. Afilu malachas maturos, even a malacha that's allowed to be done, you're not allowed to do it for a non-Jew. So I can go in my car on Chol Hamoed to the supermarket and I can purchase food and come home and cook it, drive back home and order for a Jew to have nice food for Yontiv or Chol Hamoed, but to feed it to the non-Jew, well, I can't do that because the whole point is to honor the yontif. That's why I'm allowed to do it. And he doesn't need to eat yontif. So we're not talking about, you got a destitute person who's going to die, if you don't give him some food. We're talking about giving him a nice piece of schnitzel or a steak. Right? Zion. Am I making you hungry? Making everyone hungry? The schnitzel and the thing. Okay. Number 7. Asa l'zalbul sadehu. You're not allowed to fertilize your field on Chol Hamoed. Now, even to bring sheep into a field, because they're going to fertilize it with their manure just by walking around, you can't do that. But they go, I can't even get a non-Jew to do that for me. So things like that, there's really no real enhancement to Yontiv. I'm not really going to make a financial loss. It could be if I didn't fertilize a field, I won't make as much money when I sell the produce in the future, but that's not a loss. Making less is not a loss. A loss in halacha is something that you already have. All right, so if a person gets paid per hour on their job and they say, well, I'm going to lose $500 if I don't go work on Chol Hamoed, that's not a loss. That's just not earning $500. He's not losing it. Losing it is like the example I gave, for an example, where the basement's going to flood. That he's actually going to lose something. Now, sometimes a person can work Chol Hamoed because he'll lose his job. If he's already taken off, especially Sukkot, he took off Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and 2 days Yom Tov, he's going to take off Simchas Torah. If it takes off one more day, that could be considered a loss, right? But again, someone should probably consult with their rabbi to ask their questions just to make sure. But not earning is not a loss. A loss means losing something that you already have.
But Rabbi,
Yeah.
to put fertilizer on a field for a farmer is a loss if you can do it. Maybe the next day is supposed to rain, or the next few days is supposed to rain. You have to do it right before.
Oh, whoa. Okay, you're almost there. Number 8.
Oh, okay.
All right. Now, Zariya Asura, sowing seeds is forbidden. Let's say you have seeds. And what's going to happen, unless they get put into water, unless they're in the ground at the right time and everything else we need, they're going to get ruined totally. So not that it's going to grow less well. So if it's going to grow a little bit less well, even though that might be you make less money when you sell it in the future, that we're not worried about. But if they're going to spoil, now you're allowed to water them. So with a fertilizer, I would imagine that most things could wait a few days for fertilizer. But if we're in a situation where they're going to be ruined if you don't do it, then that's a loss. You're allowed to save the seed or the sapling from a loss.
With the fertilizer, you have to fertilize. Then you plow because you have to plow the fertilizer into the ground.
Yeah.
Then you have to level the field. Then you have to plant.
So you shouldn't even start the first step till after Yom Tov, or do it in time or before Yom Tov. But if he's stuck somewhere, stuck in a situation, he misjudged it, whatever it is. He thought he could do it, and now he's in a situation where it's going to be ruined.
Right.
Not just it'll be 10% less, successful. No, it's going to be ruined. Then he's allowed to do these things.
Okay.
So test number 9. Also, you're not allowed to pluck or harvest or any produce unless it'll spoil until, if you lived after Yom Tov. Now, here we're not talking about what you need for Yom Tov itself. We're talking about you got a farm and there's, 600 apples growing on the trees. So you don't need 600 apples for Yom Tov. But if you're going to leave it, there's going to be a big hailstorm, in 2 days, or they're just perfectly all ready and they're going to get overripe, whatever it is. Then if they're going to spoil, then you can pick it on Chol Hamoed. But if it's not going to spoil, wait till after Yom Tov. Now that's what you don't need. But if it's something you want to eat, so 600 apples I don't need for Yonta, but I might want a dozen apples for my family to eat. Yeah, so that I'm allowed to pick. And you don't have to be exact. You don't have to like minimize it. Like say, well, let's see, there's 13 of us, so and this one doesn't like an apple, so I'll only get 2, and I'll make sure to get a big one because the baby maybe doesn't eat a whole apple. You don't have to be like that. You can take extra, right? There's 13 of us, I'll take 20. Make sure in case someone wants seconds, I've got plenty there. That's not a problem. If there's leftovers at the end, there's leftovers. Right? As long as you're not saying, well, maybe uncle's going to eat 35 apples for his snack, so I'll go pick 300. That doesn't work. But you don't have to be like exact to the So you pick, and you can take a few extras. You don't have to walk out to the farm again. Someone's hungry again. And if you end up with a few left over, you got a few left over. But as long as it's a few left over, not milking the system. V'chein eitzim, and the same thing applies to wood. Now, most people today, probably aren't using wood-burning stoves and various things. But in the times past, they needed to collect wood in order to be able to cook their food. So you have your wood probably in the woodshed, but you need to pick some little branches in order to kindle. So you can even cut them from the things that connect to the ground. They cut off a tree. And if you need to uproot or harvest some produce, whatever it is, to feed an animal, so you got a cow and you need to pick some hay or some straw or I don't know, something else, some barley, whatever it happens to be. You should do it, but do it differently to how you normally do it. Do it in an unusual way. You are not allowed to
Collect.
Collect like different the wood from the field in order to improve it for plowing. So although I can get some little twigs because I need them to make my fire to cook on, but I can't say, well, I'll take another 20 from here because next week I'm going to come plow. It'll be much easier if I got rid of the wood. But if it's recognizable that you're doing it for your own need, going, for example, you're taking the big ones and you're leaving the small ones. So in other words, although I shouldn't take it only for the sake of clearing my field for plowing, but if I'm collecting wood anyway, and it's obvious I'm collecting wood for my fire, so once I'm collecting already, I might as well collect the ones that'll help me out for the plowing next week. Then that I'm allowed to do. Mutter, it's allowed. Let's just finish off the likewise, you can't cut branches to improve the tree. You can't prune. You can't prune in order to make the trees. Again, if you're cutting branches because you need it for kindling, you're allowed to do. But pruning to make the tree grow better, you're not allowed to do. But if it's obvious, it's clear that you're cutting off these branches to feed to your animal and not to prune for growth. Going, for example, because you did one entire side, then you're allowed to do it. Okay. So we've run out of time. Are there any questions? No? All right. So we'll see everyone next week then, God willing. Enjoy your...
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Welcome.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your week. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.